Hello, all, and welcome to the weekly podcast. I'm your host, Gurtej Atwal. In today's podcast, we have an accomplished community activist who motivates everybody around her. We thank and welcome Fatima Iqbal Zubair, who is running for Assembly District 64. We'll learn from her experience and lifelong learning as a community advocate. Now, I request Fatima to please share her personal and journey towards policymaking.
Yes, towards policymaking. Yes.
Yep.
Yes. So, I'm just a regular person, honestly. Like that's what I wanted to start with. I think um, we don't have to be anything special to get involved, right? Like um, we can be nurses, waitresses, engineers. It doesn't matter, right? We could be a working class and still get into policymaking. And so the way I got in was actually I never thought I would honestly get into it. But it was a couple of things that happened that made me, believe that we really need a change. One was definitely when Bernie Sanders ran in 2016, and then again 2020. I think he inspired a lot of us, a lot of people to think, hey, maybe I can make a difference, and we're all needed to make a difference, right? So that was the one thing. But a lot of it was my work teaching in Watts. I uh, worked and I still engage a lot in one of the lowest income communities in California, definitely in LA County. Um, and, this community has a lot of history. It has gone through a lot of struggles, and it still does. But I really felt the spirit of the people there, my students, the families, how hard the families work, how much my students wanted, just wanted to learn and advance themselves and were so curious. And yet, we're up against a system that wasn't giving them all the resources they needed, right? Or the families were working multiple jobs. And, I fell in love with the community, right? And the people, because there's a lot of resilience. And it was in that I kind of saw, well, this is not a fair system, because it is not the fault of this community member that's working hard that they don't have a good school to go to, or they don't have, the college is so expensive for them, or their families have to work multiple jobs. It is the fault of the system, right? So that was the first thing that got me thinking about education policy, especially as an immigrant. And then the second thing, though, was that my school, didn't have access to clean water, and was built, on a site with lead and arsenic toxicity. And that to me is also a human right, just like education, right? Is that we should have access to clean drinking water, and we should, especially in the richest state in the nation, in the fifth largest economy, like how is it that people don't have clean water to drink? It's like mind boggling. So, that's what got me to step outside of the classroom. And I, got organized with very local activists, and just listened, did a lot of listening. I spoke up when I can speak up as an ally. And I myself live in a frontline community in Carson. There was just an earthquake here, and I don't know if you heard, right, but there are two refineries that just like were blowing up, flares really intensely. So when you live when I live in a community like this, I worked in a community that was doing all this, and I saw like that was going through these situations. And eventually I saw, okay, well, people are aware, people are fighting, they have been fighting. I got up to be a commissioner actually for my opponent right now, Gibson. And I was ready to work with him, but, kind of saw his record. He's been up there about 6-7 years. And it's just very tied to the industries that have hurt our community, to put it simply, right? Because money talks, and when you take that money, it influences you. And so I knew, largely because of my faith, like my faith teaches me that if you see injustice, you need to change it, you need to act. And so that's what I did without fear. And I stepped into the race. And, thankfully, Bernie Sanders got behind me in my first run, and I hope he will again in my second run, but got a lot of good endorsements and got really close to winning, and was really, really grateful for that. And we kind of built a movement. Since then, I ran a slate of delegates, which I believe you're a delegate as well, right? So I ran a whole slate in my district, and we all won. And that was, again, the same intention I had, was to just build people-centered, people before profits power in the party, right? So we can change it. And now I'm also on the Progressive Caucus board with Amar Shergill and with like the rest of the board. And we are trying to get the party to stop accepting this dirty money, right? So we can get good bills passed and good candidates elected. So that's kind of my journey in a nutshell about how I got into this.
Right. No, thank you very
Mhm.
much, Fatima. So sincerely appreciate you for stepping up and being a strong advocate for climate change, as you mentioned about the earthquake. So these things we are seeing more and more close to us. Like somewhere we are seeing the flood, somewhere we are seeing the earthquakes, then
Mhm.
fires. We are pretty much aware of those, how they are devastating our communities. So, from that perspective, how do you think everybody should be educated? They can help each other learn about. So, this is not something happening all of a sudden, it's gradual things that are being kind of adding to it now, these negative circumstances that face we are facing in our day-to-day life, and how we as people can be proactive to just find some ways how we can add value towards stopping this climate change.
Yes, it affects all of us, right? So whether we live in a middle class community, a rich community, or a poor community, right? Climate change really affects all of us, and it's in the water we drink. It's in, the likelihood of getting, fires in your area, right? Droughts, get the likelihood of get affecting your health. So how you can get affected, how you can get involved is in so many ways. You can do what me and you are doing, and kind of going in the party and advocating for the right bills, and fighting and holding power accountable, right? So you can run to be a delegate, for example. But in other ways, you can join, groups like Sunrise Movement. There's a group in my district called Communities for a Better Environment. Um, you can join local activist groups to place pressure on our elected officials to advocate on the congressional level, on the local level, for change. Because at the end of the day, we have to. That's how a democracy should work, right?
Right.
Our leaders should be held accountable to us, and so we have to make sure we hold them accountable in every way we can, whether it's from on the inside of the party or on the outside, putting pressure in. And so just get involved, any organization you can, whether it's the Democratic Party, whether it's Sunrise or Food and Water Action, or any sort of local group.
Right.
That's important. And I think activism is also just talking to your friends and family about it, right?
Right.
Um, and just that's like the most easiest activism, like the things you can talk to your family about, your friends, and just that is really important. Get more people involved, right?
Yeah.
There's always a way someone can help, even if you're a teacher, bringing up that in the classroom, bringing up environmental racism, educating students, educating the youth on this. That is also activism, right? If you're a lawyer, right, and you are fighting against environmental violations, right, against developments, you are fighting that, right? So just everyone has a role to play, whether you're young, whether you are a professional or a teacher or a mother or a father. It doesn't matter. Everyone has a role that they can play, right? And one thing I'm doing as a mom is I'm making sure that my son, right, understands what fossil fuels are, understands, what renewable energy is, right? So we can even start teaching our kids young, right? So that,
Right.
because their minds are really malleable. I mean, there's activism to me is so multifaceted. It's not just joining a group. You can do it at home, So
Right.
yeah. Mm.
Yeah, no, and one thing, the United States, we have research and development, we have innovation. That is only possible because of education. And you mentioned you are involved with grassroots level, and you are seeing that many children, they are getting deprived of that basic necessity that is education. So how they can become future leaders. So
Mhm.
from your experience, how do you think a common man they can add value in that perspective, where education should be available for everybody, especially for our sisters, for our younger women?
Yes. So are you asking, like, how can someone who doesn't maybe have the educational attainment, or like a college degree or something, how can they be active?
Right. You, or maybe whoever is listening to you. So, what are the solutions around that? How a common person can advocate or add value so that everybody should be educated? They should get the right to get the education.
Yes. Yeah. So I think just, when the elections come, for example, you can understand who the candidates are, right? I mean, Google them, Google the candidates, look at their websites. What, if we're talking about climate change, what are their policy points on climate change? For example, my opponent, I think his last website, he had like one line, right?
Right.
One line about climate change. That's ridiculous, right? look at the policies of the candidates, engage in voting, right? Because at the end of the day, our policymakers are the ones that are making these big decisions on how we can transition to clean energy, how we can hold our refineries accountable. So get to know your candidates and engage in voting, educate others in voting. That's one way. Thankfully, I mean, I want to say everyone has Wi-Fi access, but that's also something not everyone has. But if you,
Right.
have Wi-Fi access, I mean, just be careful what's on the internet. But there's a lot of good articles and resources on the internet you could like educate yourself on and learn. And then I think that's the power of, again, joining groups like Sunrise or Communities for a Better Environment or Sierra Club or something like that, right? That's the advantage of joining one of these groups, because even if you don't have the means, right, to maybe get all these resources or know what bills to advocate for, right, together, that information is there and you can share that information and get it from someone who has it. So I think that's the power in really joining a group, regardless of your background or education level. There's power, there's organizing power when people get together. You can share knowledge, you can advocate together, right?
Right. And Fatima, if you get an opportunity to be elected for Assembly District 64, you'll be the first Asian woman as well as the first Muslim woman to be in that leading role. So you may have faced certain challenges while you were doing this political journey. So some of the challenges that you think those should be known to other women, other girls, so that they can be prepared to deal those challenges better.
Yes. Thank you for that question. Yes, I would be the first South Asian woman and the first Muslim elected, as you mentioned. And honestly, even just being a woman, right now the legislature is only about 30% women, and there's only one teacher. I'd be the second teacher. So I think, some of the challenges I've encountered are what many women of color encounter, right? Sadly, right? When we think of leaders, right? If you ask a child, who do you see as a leader, they're most likely going to pick a male, right? Or a female, right? So it's just breaking those stereotypes, right? I think, one thing that helps me is not feeling, being confident in what your intentions are and not being afraid to speak up, right? Because we don't, maybe young girls don't see as many women as they need to, right, in these leadership positions. So just encouraging, our girls watching, like, not being afraid to like speak up, and break against all, honestly, cultural barriers too, right? I know in my culture, it wasn't always right. Like, I mean, everyone in my family wasn't really happy that I was opinionated or that I had an idea here or that I even wanted to run for office, right?
Right.
But like, it comes back to your intention, right? Don't be afraid, like, of just doing something just because your family doesn't want to, or they do it because you feel that it's right, that your conviction is there, and know that if your intention is right, like, you'll make like a big influence in the world, right? And then making sure that you have a good like support system, right? So I'm thankful to have like my partner who's like very supportive, and a few good friends, right? So making sure you have a good support system, because it is not easy running as a woman of color. Just lean on other women, too, right? Because we understand, sometimes when others have the same identity as us, they have gone through the same struggles, and so it's good to have that support system to lean on as well. But yeah, it is difficult. I mean, there are times, sometimes you feel insecure and like you're like, oh, am I supposed to be speaking up here or doing this or doing that? But it's important to have those allies that encourage you to speak up and who have your back, right? And just know that as long as you're doing it for the right reason, you're doing the right thing, right? Like, I mean, your intentions are right. Just keep going.
Right. So, Fatima, you're always in the community, and for the past 1 year, you may have seen much difference or much impact due to COVID. So now things are improving; they are coming to a good pace. So, how do you think your community or the District 64 needs support from assembly member, and what are your thoughts for that?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is healthcare access, because we were in a healthcare crisis. We're still in a pandemic.
Right.
I'm a big supporter of making sure everyone has access to healthcare. And right now, healthcare isn't a human right in our state. So, there is a bill up in the state legislature, AB 1400. So I support that bill, and I want to make sure that, it gets through, and that our governor also supports that and gets the funding and everything that we need to get that done. So healthcare access is something that my community needs. The other thing is just, also jobs and wages comes up, like, because a lot of people lost their jobs and they lose their homes. So we have to really make sure we raise our minimum wage in California. We have to make sure that, our workers have can easily get unionized and form unions so that they can fight for better wages and for better working conditions, right? And things like that. That is really, really important, because my district is very working class and had a lot of frontline workers. And in the pandemic, I saw, a lot of workers get laid off their job and with no promise of getting their job back, or getting stuck with healthcare costs that they couldn't pay for. So just making sure that, we have good wages and good jobs, and where workers are protected through unions. Another aspect is, even though environmental justice may not come to the forefront of a lot of people, those that live near pollution are at increased risk of getting COVID and respiratory diseases. So, definitely still not forgetting, right, that we need to live in a clean environment is really, really important. I mean, I could talk about all the policy platforms, because I think the pandemic brought to light, right, really everything that was kind of a hole in our system, right? Whether it's healthcare or education, even in education, like thinking about, when the kids had to stay home, what do parents who are working, both parents are working, what do they do, right? If their kids are young, they had to figure out childcare, and childcare can be expensive, right? So then we think about the policy of universal childcare, right? We should be able to provide childcare as a rich estate as well to every family. And so, those are just some of the issues, but I'm just scratching the surface, because I think the pandemic definitely brought out pretty much every hole in our system, right? Every difficulty. And so we saw really how much economic inequity there is, right? How much economic inequity, racial inequity. I mean, and so honestly, like, I can't really pick one issue, because all those issues and more, like, we saw happen in the pandemic. And it just spoke to that we have to do better as a state, as which has a supermajority of Democrats at the legislature and a Democratic governor. We have to do better, right, for our communities, because we can. I mean, that's what Democrats should stand for. And so, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So democracy is for us, so we should be more proactive, asking questions. And for your district, it has around more than 400,000 population that will be voting. Approximately 400,000 population is total population. Around 300,000 is voting, but around 200,000 are the youngest voters, or which are approaching the age of voting. So what is your message for them, how they should be looking at these elections, what their expectations should be, how they can research a candidate and make up their mind?
Yeah. I think, young people, they're always on social media, right? So a lot of candidates are on social media. So look at, what kind of things they're fighting for, what kind of things they're willing to say, because you have some candidates that are afraid, right, to stand up for the farmers in India, or for Palestine, or, for a Green New Deal, for environmental justice. But you have other candidates that are bold and courageous. I think so. I'm not saying rely on social media, but thinking about a young person when I was a teenager, I can say, oh, go do all this research, but I'd say, usually if candidates have social media, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, so that's a good place to start, because it'll give you a taste of what the candidate is willing to fight for and say publicly, right? Which I think is a demonstration of courage. And then the other thing is, yes, like, I mean, thankfully, again, everything is online, right? So type in the candidate's name, look at some articles about them, look at their website, engage with them, see if they're willing to have a conversation with you, right? There are really good sites like Voters Edge, Ballotpedia, right, where the candidates have profiles. Look for those. If the candidates are engaged in forums in your local Democratic clubs, go and listen to see how they answer questions, how they debate. So those are some tips, but at the end of the day, like, it's just important for you to make your own opinion, right, on these candidates. So it's important for you to do that research, be present and engaged, and know that your vote matters, right? It really, really does matter, because everything we're fighting for is really for the future of our youth, for the future of our planet. They're going to be here longer than we are, right? And so it's really, really important that our youth are really engaged, in elections.
Right. So as so much so young population is in there in your district, as well as all the listening people, or they have kids like school going and college going students, especially girls, women who are interested in policymaking field. From your experience, how do you suggest them? So what kinds of options they should be exploring and pursuing to enter this policymaking field?
Yeah. So I would say, like, honestly, there's no one major that you have to be, right? I think we need a diversity of people from different backgrounds and different educational backgrounds, right? Whether it's teaching, law, anything, honestly, environmental science, political science, ethnic studies. But I think if you are interested in policymaking and you're in college, what you can do is look for a politician in your area that resonates with your values, and see if they offer a fellowship or an internship, or if you can volunteer with them, right? The best way to learn is always through experience. So see if they have an opportunity where you can volunteer with their office. That is the best way to honestly to get involved. And yeah, that's what I would say, honestly. Get involved with a candidate or with an issue. Like, sometimes there's healthcare for all, or there's an issue, a political issue that a group of people is fighting for. So get involved with that. And that's the best way to honestly learn and figure out what you want to focus on. Maybe you want to focus on healthcare or environmental justice, or maybe you're thinking you want to be a candidate one day. So when you kind of test the waters, right, of what's happening in your area locally, through volunteering, through going to the meetings, getting engaged, you can kind of see, okay, well, maybe I like, this issue better, or I want to work in this policy area, or I want to run for office one day. So I'm going to, continue this fellowship or something like that. So just test the waters of what's happening in your own community.
Right. So in the end, Fatima, so any key point or any topic that we missed, so you want to touch base on?
No, I think you asked really good questions. So I don't think I can really think of anything. The only thing I would say is, my website is fatimafораssembly.com. So it's FATIMAFOR assembly.com. You could find out more information there about me and what I stand for, and you could support there in any way you can. And I'm just really grateful to reach different communities, right? So I'm like grateful for you to have me on the show and to be able to reach the North Indian Sikh community, right? So thank you so much for this opportunity. Yeah.
Sure. And Fatima, in the end, so just briefly summarize how everybody listening to you, they'll remember Fatima, what she stands for.
That's a good question. Okay, so I want people to remember me as being bold and courageous and unapologetic. And what I really stand for is justice for all people, right? No matter the cost, right? No matter the cost, because it's hard to fight for that. And, because sometimes there's a lot against you, but I want people to remember me as always being on their side, even when it gets tough, even when I have, a special interest in my ear, even when I have, people telling me, what are you doing? Why are you, why are you fighting so hard? This is not good for your political future, right? I want people to remember that no matter what the risk, I'll always do the right thing and always stand up for them.
Right. No, thank you very much, Fatima. And I'll request our listeners to please explore Fatima. So she's on her Facebook page. So I'll share the link where you can reach out to her for any questions, any comments, and just try to learn who Fatima is and what she stands for, so that you can make an informed decision for the next assembly elections. So whatever your decision would be, please research and do vote. So thank you very much, Fatih. I sincerely appreciate you for coming to this show and taking your time to educate us, to give us an opportunity to learn about you. So, and
Thank you so
thanks
much.
to the listeners for watching. And please do send us questions and your feedback for the topics that you would want to listen in the next episodes. We'll see you in the next episode. Stay healthy and stay informed. Thank you.